All right. So yesterday I touched on a variety of different rod types, why you would pick a certain type of rod for the style of fishing. And you know what I got asked a bunch of times after that, and I should have known better, was the type of fishing line. And a more commonly asked question is all the different colors out there nowadays and styles. How do you pick what and when? And it's kind of an open-ended question, and some of it really comes down to personal preference and confidence, right? So there's all different kinds of types of colored lines, and then there's three main types of fishing line, be it monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. So let's first touch on those three aspects of ice fishing. Monofilament is probably going to be your most versatile, going to be your most tried and true ice fishing option. It has stretch, it has some ruggedness. It doesn't absorb water, so when we're dealing with winter conditions where it's freezing all the time, the water propels off the line. You can easily scrape the ice. It kind of gives you the best of all the worlds, right? The memory is really good. It doesn't coil up as much off a reel if you're going to use a spinning rod. So monofilament tends to be the type of line most ice anglers gravitate towards the most. You'll see monofilament on quite a few of my ice fishing setups. In fact, that's the at least half of my overall ice fishing setups, if not more, will have monofilament. Then you have a fluorocarbon line. Fluorocarbon has a lot of the same characteristics as monofilament. It's going to have some stretch. It's not going to absorb a ton of water. It is, in theory, going to be more abrasion resistant, and it's going to be more invisible in the water. Monofilament, for the most part, is pretty darn invisible, but fluorocarbon has a few added characteristics to make it a little more invisible. So if you're going to be fishing, let's say, really finicky, clear water panfish or trout or walleyes, you may want to use either a fluorocarbon leader or all fluorocarbon fishing line. So if I'm using, let's say here, a spooler rod, which is going to be your spooler style reel where the line comes off nice and straight. It doesn't have a lot of line twist to begin with. This is something you can get away with using straight fluorocarbon. So I'll put a bunch of backing on here, fill that arbor as big as I can so that when the line comes off, it's the largest diameter. And then I'll put that 2 or 3 or pound test fluorocarbon if I'm looking for that finicky, shallow water, bluegill, crappie, perch, trout setup. And then if I'm fishing, let's say, a braided rod or something to that effect where I'm going to be fishing deeper, I'll put that monofilament or that fluorocarbon leader on there so I can have that portion of the line be, in our eyes, invisible to the fish. So fluorocarbon can be used on a reel or it can be used as a leader material. Both work exceptionally well. And then your braided lines. I just showed you that one setup I have for braided lines. Now, braided lines have no stretch, so they're not going to have a lot of forgiveness on, let's say, hook sets or things like that. So braided lines are nice if you're going to be deep water walleye fishing, perch fishing, pan fishing, and you need that hook set where it's in a deeper water, a lot more line out, and you don't want that stretch in your fishing line. So braided line is also generally more sensitive. You can feel things better with that. You have, again, very abrasion resistant against the side of the hole. However, braided lines do soak up water, so keep that in mind. If you're going to be fishing a lot outside and hole hopping, you will notice that really any braided line in the market, for the most part, will absorb some water, stick to itself on the spool. It can do that. We've developed a line through a clam called Frost Ice line, and their braided option is really good at not absorbing water. I mean, it still absorbs some water. I'd be lying to you if I say it didn't. But in terms of any other fishing line I've used on a braided scale, it absorbs the least amount of water and really holds those weaves tight to give you kind of that added oomph if you're looking to use a braided fishing line. So those are the three types: monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. Now I wanted to jump in briefly on color of line color, and why you would pick each one. I'm going to go back and revert to one of my opening sentences of this video. It's really about, at times, confidence, personal preference. Sometimes we get so caught up in color, whether it's color of the fishing line, color of the jig, color of the plastic we use. Oftentimes it doesn't make a huge bit of difference. It's more about us. But there are situations for sure where colored line can come into play and give you an advantage or disadvantage. For starters, clear fishing lines are obviously going to be your best option in very clear water. If you're fishing gin clear water, which in the wintertime, generally speaking, the water is the clearest it's going to be all year. Clear lines can give you an added advantage if you're going to be fishing in shallow, clear water, not a lot of snow cover, where there's where there's a lot of light penetration. Fish can see things more, pick up on things more. Clear can work out. There's also metered lines, which you're going to see here with some of our options from Clam Frost Ice, where every 18 inches, 20 inches or so, it changes from clear to a colored line. Now you can tie onto that clear portion, so this much of your line in the water column is clear. Gives you that confidence you can still see the line. So there's options out there, not just for all clear, but metered options as well, where it alternates from clear and a colored line. So that may be what a lot of anglers start to gravitate towards, myself included. You've seen me use a lot of this metered line the last few years since we came up with this Frost Ice. So clear line has its advantages for sure. I'll use clear line quite a bit, but nowadays, honestly, I'm using a colored line or a metered line more than anything, and I'll show you why I'm doing that. For starters, you have metered red line. Red's one of those colors that changes its color in the water at different depths. You can see it well against the ice and the snow. And again, this metered monofilament I can tie right on the clear portion and still have that ability. So I've been using a lot of red line the last year or so since it came out, and have really seen success. I haven't seen a huge disadvantage in clear water, honestly, when using this red line. So I've seen red as a color that I can use in a variety of situations, whether it's on my Elite Series, Gravity Elite reels, my spooler rods, my spinning rods for fishing deep water walleyes. Red's a good option, and that comes in a monofilament only. You have metered orange. Same idea. You can see that orange well against the ice and the snow if you're tight lining and watching what the fish does. And again, it's metered, so you can tie onto that clear section. So orange is another option, very similar to red. I saw about the same type of response on fish behavior activity, catch rate on red and orange. They both work just fine. And one tip here, you can see I got two different colors, obviously. Both of these are monofilament. And one advantage of different color lines like Frost Ice offers is I can put 2 pound as my orange rods, 3 pound as my red rods, and it's very easy to grab and not go, what pound test line did I have on there? So if I feel confident they both have the same success rate, I make sure all my rods with 2 pound test have orange, all my rods with 3 pound test have red, because depending on the lure I'm fishing, I want that 2 or that 3 pound test. So there's another advantage of different color lines. It's easier for me to grab the rod and know what pound test is on there. So those are good options. And then the other new monofilament color this year is gold. And I'm super excited about the gold line. This is solid gold. This is not metered. And this gold line is exceptionally well for those anglers that like to tight line. They watch that line as it enters the water for every twitch and movement. You know, I'll fish this gold line in a variety of different setups, and I used this gold line a little bit last year, got to play with it. I've always been a believer in gold line because I can see it, I can tie knots, and again, I don't feel like it makes a huge difference to the fish. So I'm playing with gold lines a bunch more this year. You'll see gold line rigs rigged on a handful of my rods. So the monofilament options from Frost are clear, the red and the orange meter, and the gold, solid gold. They really nailed that color well. Monofilament as well. And then you go to the fluorocarbon options, and you're going to have a pink metered, a green metered, and of course a clear. And again, same situation, different strokes for different folks. I don't find a huge disadvantage on one or the other. And again, you can tie onto that clear section, and you can also really be productive with your arsenal knowing what pound test lines you have. Everything from 1 pound to 8 pound is offered in that metered line in both the monofilament and the fluorocarbon. So that's really how I determine some of the color spectrums. To me, I'm not a big believer on a disadvantage of colored line. Now, if you're talking bass fishing in the summertime and you're using a thicker 20, 30 pound braid that's moss green, I feel like fish can see that a little better. But I've seen in the wintertime, at least in my opinion, I have not seen a massive disadvantage for any of these colors that I've thrown at you so far. So those are your options in fluorocarbon and monofilament. And sure, you can play the whole, if I'm in the weeds, color doesn't matter, which is probably the case. If I'm open water, very clear water, if you want the confidence factor, go straight clear, see how that works, or try a meter, and maybe you'll catch fish and realize I can use whatever I want. So going on to braid, there's 2 really different colors of braid out there. You have a high vis line, whether it's a chartreuse like you see here, or a white type line, and then you have usually your smoke colored lines. I'm usually a high vis guy. Again, I can tie a fluorocarbon leader like you see on here to the end of this, but now I can see the line, I can tie the knots. Braid is thinner diameter in nature, harder to tie, harder to see. So you'll see a lot of high vis green chartreuse on my rods if I'm fishing braid, and this one happens to be a medium light setup, 1/8 ounce flutter spoon, deep water perch I was using this for, crappies, and I'll use the braids for walleyes as well. Lake trout, again, no stretch, a lot of power on the hook set. And depending on what I'm fishing for water type, it could be smoke, high vis colored line, but again, I'm using that fluorocarbon leader. So I think braid doesn't make as near much a difference as the monofilaments because I'm generally using a fluorocarbon leader. And if I don't need a fluorocarbon leader, if I'm pike fishing or let's say walleye fishing in dirty water, the line doesn't make a big difference anyway. So a lot of things to think about when it comes to line, whether it's fluorocarbon, monofilament, braid, color spectrums, all that sort of stuff. Hopefully I cleared some of the air. And the biggest thing I tell anglers is, confidence. It's an opinion. What kind of color line do you like? Color match your different pound tests for the type of fishing you want to do to be efficient and be more productive on the